Am I a good swordsman or am I a horrible swordsman? Well, it depends. What do you mean by swordsman? Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and this video was inspired by a bunch of haters, I gotta say. As you know, I'm a practitioner of Koryu. I practice Katori Shintoryu. It's been about 8 months, so I'm still very much of a beginner. But I also have experience in hand-to-hand martial arts like Kyokushinkai Karate, and I have experience of a few years in Kendo. Now, after seeing some videos where I take the sword, and some people have underlined my so-called lack of techniques, the fact that my positions are terrible, particularly emphasizing my upper stance, the Jodan no Kamae, more on that later, saying how horrible it was, etc. Other people have said that I would be a terrible swordsman and that I would die immediately in a real duel. But here's the thing. To answer to the question, am I really a horrible swordsman or am I a good swordsman? Well, we first need to emphasize the difference between the original meaning of the word swordsman in the times when using a sword was the difference between your life and your death, and the meaning within the word swordsman in 2018. The modern swordsman. And to be honest, this video is not just about Kenjutsu or Kendo, but it is also about Hima. Now, of course, we are always talking about martial arts. Thing is, though, that when you talk about the times of war, meaning the times of, for example, Sengoku Jidai or even Heian Jidai in Japan, or whether you're talking about medieval knights, or whether you're talking about the Roman soldiers using the gladi to fight, then it's when the word martial is underlined when saying martial arts. When you talk about modern day swordsmanship, whether it be Kendo, Kenjutsu or Hima, then you're talking about martial arts with the word arts underlined, because we live in a time of peace and because these weapons, although they are incredibly fascinating and amazing, they are outdated and from a combat point of view obsolete. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Hima, I love Kenjutsu, but you do realize that there is a massive difference between a person who is a soldier, a Roman soldier, who needs to learn how to use the gladius properly because it's state-of-the-art technology. It's the weapon that he needs to use for his daily job and to remain alive on the battlefield to stop the barbarians that want him dead. The enormous difference of a samurai who needed to learn how to use his sword, and although it was a backup weapon, because he of course used other weapons on the battlefield which were main weapons such as the yari, the naginata or the bow, it was still a weapon, a backup weapon. You still need to know how to use it to defend yourself, and most importantly, and that connects also to the medieval times in Europe, it's a self-defense weapon, because of course a samurai can't really go around town or enter inside buildings wearing a frigging naginata, and of course a medieval knight or a nobleman couldn't really go around with a halberd on his belt. The sword is the perfect weapon for self-defense. So we can summarize the old, ancient, original meaning of swordsman as someone who needs to either is a soldier and needs to use it professionally, or is someone who is learning the sword for self-defense. Now, neither of those two cases exist in our modern day and age. So a modern day swordsman doesn't need to use it for self-defense. And when we talk about soldiers, well, a modern day soldier doesn't need to know how to use a sword. He needs to know how to use the weapon that is now state-of-the-art technology, and that is rifle, assault rifles, and so on. Understanding this huge difference, which may seem obvious but it's not, and we'll get to that in a moment as to why, understanding this difference is huge, because when we say, are you a good swordsman from a modern point of view? Then no, I'm not a good swordsman, I'm a horrible swordsman. Why? Because it takes maybe a decade to be good with the positions, to be good with the techniques of whether it be Kenjutsu or Hima. So no, I'm not a good swordsman from a modern era of peace perspective, and when I say modern, we can go all the way back to Edo Jidai. But am I a good swordsman from the original meaning of the word? Well, you need to understand that in the beginning, when the era of peace came in, a lot of spirituality, a lot of philosophy, a lot of beauty of movement was introduced into the concept of martial arts. Japanese traditions have been kept for longer, but of course they have been changed. Don't imagine for 1 second that what you see when you practice Kenjutsu, even older styles like Katori Shintoryu, and even worse when you go to Kendo or Yaido like Seitei. Yaido Seitei is like super modern. Don't even imagine for a second that what you're seeing there is the exact photocopy of what a samurai of the Sengoku Jidai or a samurai of the Heian Jidai were doing, because it's not. Some techniques are there, of course, particularly in styles like Katori Shintori, Shintoryu, which are, very preservative, but other things were added during the times of peace, such as Seiza, for example, and the whole idea of your soul resides in the sword. All these things are very nice, but you can afford to be philosophical and to look for perfection of movement when your life is not at stake. But when you are on the battlefield, one and only one is the focus of all combat martial arts throughout the entire globe. You need to be able to kill your opponent without being hit. Full stop. It's as crude as that. Now, of course, the way you reach it is rather complex. Body mechanics, proper position, techniques, all these things are present in original martial arts during the times of war. But all these things have one common denominator, one common goal, and that is hitting the opponent without being hit. And when talking samurai, to be honest, I think it gets even cruder than that. It's like, how many people, and I'm gonna say, how many bodies can you cut into pieces without being hit or before being hit? You need to kill and keep yourself safe. But that is the ultimate goal of real swordsmanship, of real, authentic, original swordsmanship. So I believe that if we were to summarize the real swordsmen, those who are more similar to the swordsmen of the past, and I'm sure many of you are like this, so we can have three sort of scenarios. The best swordsman you can have is the swordsman who's got technique, utilizes body mechanics, has got proper positions, hits the opponent without being hit. That's the top. Now, that leaves us with two other options. You get a swordsman who is technical, perfect technique, perfect body mechanics, very good positioning, but when he tries to hit, he doesn't, because he has no experience whatsoever in fighting. And another swordsman who, his techniques are not good, they're a little dirty, he still has a lot to learn, he doesn't have proper position, but when he hits, he does hit. His hits are well placed, with proper blade alignment, and he gets out of it unscathed. Now, a lot of people give priority to the guy who looks good. I don't. I think the other one, the third swordsman that I mentioned, is better than the second one. Not better than the first, but better than the second one. Because remember, perfect placement, body mechanics, techniques, their sole unique purpose is to achieve that very goal of hitting without being hit. If you don't, no value from a martial point of view, lots of value from an artistic point of view. Remember, martial arts. So all of this to say that, yes, people criticize my ability to do, for example, the Jodan no Kamae, the upper stance, because they say my elbows are wrong because it should be 3 centimeters lower or higher, and they say that it's terrible to look at. And yet, when I do sparring, I hit my friends constantly in the head. I'm quite quick with that technique. There are still a lot of things that I'm not good at, but I know for a fact that I can hit people who don't want to be hit in the face. And of course you can tell, well, but your friends are not trained. Well, I hit a Kendo as well, and I hit a Himagai, and I'm talking about a good Himagai, and I hit him in the forehead. So if that was without being hit, I evaded his attack. So if that was a real duel, yes, from a technical point of view, from a position and everything from the point of view of his correctness of position, he was much better swordsman than me. But if that were a real duel, I would have come out of it unscathed, and his head would have been split open with his brains on the floor. Now, from the point of view of a samurai, Roman soldier, medieval knight, medieval man at arms, I would be the better swordsman. Me or you, okay? This is not a video focused on my ability or lack thereof. It's a video that is using me, since I was attacked publicly actually on a Facebook page, to underline a concept that unfortunately has been forgotten. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, but people who have got good techniques, good techniques is going to allow you to reach efficacy. So if you've got proper body mechanics, proper positioning, proper technique, you will be a more effective fighter. But to that I respond, only if you do sparring. So that is why I've got loads of respect for Hima guys, because Hima guys do sparring all the time. Kendo guys, they do quite a lot of sparring. Kenjutsu and Iaido, zero sparring. So is this an attack towards Kenjutsu people? Absolutely not. I love Kenjutsu from the depth of my soul. But I hate it when I see people with zero combat experience come to me and tell me, oh, I could have taken you down and you wouldn't have even lasted 2 minutes with me. I would have killed you immediately. Look at the position of the elbow. I would have sniped your elbow in me. Oh, you're so terrible. I would kill you immediately. You wouldn't even last 10 seconds. All of that is in their mind. Now, in the Kenjutsu community, I've got very cool people who support me and a lot of people who hate me. Now, for all the haters, I know they're going to use this video, they're going to take my statements out of context, and they're going to say that I'm saying that Kenjutsu is a lot of bullshit. I am not saying that Kenjutsu is bullshit. I'm saying that Kenjutsu is an amazing treasure of knowledge, philosophy, technique, and everything. But I'm saying that Kenjutsu, if you do Kenjutsu alone and you never spar, you are a beautiful swordsman. You're not an effective swordsman. And you are a good modern swordsman, but you're not a good swordsman from the original point of view. So what I'm saying is not change Kenjutsu. I'm not saying take Kenjutsu and force sparring into it, because of course I understand the beauty of the preservation of these traditions. I'm not saying that. But for example, doing something like I do, I spar once or sometimes even twice a week with my friends. I try to apply some of the techniques that I learn, mixed with the Kendo techniques that I've learned, and to me that completes me as a swordsman. Even if I'm still a beginner, I can be a good beginner swordsman. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you have to spar. You don't have to. You can practice Kenjutsu, any style, for 20 years, and you can have spiritual inner growth, you can be a better person, you can have physical benefits from the training of it, and you can be amazing, like really skilled. And that's fine if that's what you want. But when people who do this, so they only do it for the beauty of it, for the artistic component of the art, then they start talking of how they could destroy you guys that have sparring experience. And I'm saying no. I'm saying it's in you. You gotta prove it. It's like having a boxer who has got like 15 years of experience in boxing, but he has never fought, he has never stepped in a ring, and he has only done shadow boxing. I'm sure his techniques are amazing, very good to look at. But then you take a boxer who's only got 5 years of experience, but those 5 years are hard earned on the ring. Well, sorry, my money's on the second guy as far as the effective fighter is concerned. But does that mean that I don't respect the first fighter? I do respect him because he's doing a physical activity. It's a sport, whatever. I'm sure he's very cool to look at, but he's not effective. It's like imagining you've got a second-degree black belt of a style of whatever, karate, let's say, against a green belt, okay? Now, a lot of people automatically underline, expect you to say, because they want you to say, that the black belt guy could destroy the green belt guy. Well, I'm going to say it depends, because if the black belt guy has never fought and has only done technique or kata, and the green belt guy instead, not only has he fought on like in the dojo, but he also lives in a rough area and he frigging fights on the street to defend himself, again, he is the better karateka, he is the better fighter. A similar situation happened when I was in Japan. I was practicing Kyokushin karate. In the dojo, there were quite a lot of fighters and there were quite a lot of karateka. My sensei was a 4th degree black belt of Kyokushin Kai. Very, very good teacher and a very good practitioner of karate. Thing is though, that there was also a 1st degree black belt karateka in the dojo. He was the strongest guy I've ever met in my life. That guy was a freaking killing machine. You hit him, you hurt yourself. It was a freaking solid rock. His technique was amazing. He was better than the teacher. But oh no, you could not say it, because you have to respect the teacher and you have to say that the teacher is better. Now, I hate it. I hate this aspect of also dogmatic religious reverence that some people put forcefully inside martial arts. Now, I'm not saying he would be a better sensei. My sensei was very good at teaching. This guy couldn't teach anything. He couldn't even teach 2 + 2 to a kid, but he was a much better fighter. So when he fought against everyone else, and I fought the guy, okay, it was amazing. When he fought everyone else in the dojo, he was going full force, because Kyokushin Kai is full force. But when he was fighting against the sensei, he had to tune it down, because he was the sensei and he wouldn't be respectful. I agree with the concept of respect. I agree with the fact that it's the dojo of the sensei, so you want to tune it down a little bit with the sensei, fine. But when I heard my classmate saying, oh, the sensei is the strongest, the sensei could destroy that guy because he's 4th dan, I'm like, no, I think that guy can take on the sensei easy. And that's being honest within and pragmatic, to be honest, within the world of martial arts. What I'm trying to say is that you guys who do sparring, and it doesn't really matter, I mean, you can be a Kenjutsu practitioner who has also done kickboxing for that matter. you still have an overall understanding of what it means to face an opponent. Now, what kind of swordsman am I? I'm not a good swordsman, but I'm not a horrible swordsman either, because again, as I said, I have sparred, and sometimes my technique, my Jodan no Kamae wasn't good looking, possibly it wasn't correct, but I still hit. And again, I don't think it's better than someone who can both hit and be technical, but I think it is better than someone who's only technical and cannot hit, or thinks he can hit but he can't in reality because he never sparred. I mean, imagine taking now a Roman soldier, a real battlefield master, and showing him a swordsman who is only very technical and beautiful to look at, but then he has never sparred, he has never fought with anyone. I mean, they fought continuously during training. They understood that. He would very much prefer someone who is dirtier but gets the work done. And also, and what I'm about to say is going to get me a lot of hate, but also, if you get a modern day Kenjutsu master, Yaido, incredible 10th dan, incredible to look at, very quick, very precise, and you get him in a cage, Mortal Kombat, with a real samurai, battle-handed samurai of 600 years ago, 700 years ago, who gets resuscitated, he has got no chance. Sorry to say that. I know it will upset people, but my money's on the samurai because he's battle-hardened, and it's a huge difference. The reason why sparring is so important in weapon-based martial arts and also hand-to-hand martial arts is because it teaches you three things that are fundamental and you can only learn if you fight. Tempo, so time, the amount of things that you can do within a given time. Distance, so how to manage safe distance into critical distance, which is the distance that you need to achieve for hitting the opponent, getting out of it unscathed. And third, improvisation. Technique that you do, of course, against imaginary opponents, but even worse, when you do it again with a partner, cannot teach you proper timing, proper tempo, because the opponent is doing nothing. It just lets you do the technique so that you can learn it. And yes, muscle memory is important, but how many people I have criticized in the past, people who just they say, okay, the opponent is going to cut me, and then you parry, you turn, you go around, you take his elbow, you move the sword, you stab him in the throat, you do a 360 kick in the head, then you take the weapon, then you change it when you've got two weapons. This is bull. It's like it's time frozen, and it doesn't work. In reality, he goes to cut, you deflect, and he's already doing something else. There is only so much that you can do within reaction time of your opponent, and of course, training muscle memory helps out. But it's not a spell, it's not like a time spell that stops time entirely. Only sparring can teach you how many things you can effectively do before the opponent retaliates, and depending on the level of your opponents, things will still be a variable. Distance is also something that you do not learn, because the moment you get closer, and you enter inside the critical zone, there are so many things that can go wrong. And if you don't actually get hit, you will not understand what works and what doesn't. So you need to fight and spar constantly and intensively against people who want to hit you and don't want to get hit, in order to really learn how to manage this continuous flow of distance and guards until you find the perfect position, the perfect situation to operate your weapon and make sure that you don't get hit. You will be hit loads of times until you become good at it, and you cannot learn if you don't fight. But improvisation is really the real application of kata, in my opinion, because kata forms, they teach you this choreographed stage fighting that, yes, they tell you they've got loads of sub-levels and depth and everything, and secret techniques hidden that you can only understand if you practice for 25 years. But here's the thing, all of that still is not going to work if you don't try to apply those techniques in real life, because the moment you fight, everything that was in your head, the moment you go and you try your technique and your opponent does something that you weren't predicting, which will happen, then your ability to adapt to that, your mental equations that change immediately, how quickly you can do that and how effectively you can do that, only comes through practice. There is no muscle memory in the planet that can teach you how to react effectively to an opponent who is not doing what you want him to do. Now, this is why I believe it would be important, and I suggest this, okay? And I know that people tell me that since I don't have a black belt, I should shut up and listen. This is what a lot of people think in the martial arts community. I don't agree. freedom of speech, very important human right. And innovators in the past have been criticized. For example, Master Oyama, he was saying that, complaining about other styles of karate in Japan, and he said that the guys that he saw, they were just dancers basically. But he said, I can take them on, and they criticized him until they accepted the challenge, and he beat them all. And that's when it became a massive thing, Kyokushin Karate, when people saw that the guy was legit. So I'm still gonna say what I think. People will criticize me, they will say that I should shut up. I'm not gonna shut up. And what I believe is that you shouldn't change the tradition and the core of the martial art because of the precious tradition that it has, which is a treasure. But if you really want to know how to fight, and if you want the right to say that you would be a better fighter, that you would cut people who are lower than you from a technical point of view, then you need to do some sparring as a complementary activity, possibly with some of your friends. If you don't, sorry, but I don't believe you can be a strong and effective fighter. I'm not saying that those people who do it for a philosophical reason, for, I don't know, for the tradition, for the love of the art in itself, are doing it wrong. Absolutely, I respect them. But some of these people, they still talk to you as if they are better than you also at fighting, without having fought in their entire life. Then to that, I say no. Now, I'm not saying that everyone who has ever practiced Kenjutsu and never sparred doesn't know how to fight. Instead, there are some people who are naturals. They are people who are natural for combat. They are very good already at fighting, and when you take that and you add technique, positioning, proper training, then they become amazing. And some of these people could be effective at fighting even if they don't spar. But that's a minority. The majority of people who practice a Kenjutsu style or Iaido, for example, and have never fought, they know how to use a sword, they're very beautiful, they are even near perfection for the usage, or the artistic usage of the sword, but they don't know how to fight. I want to go a step further with this and talk a little bit about Kendo and Kenjutsu and Iaido, to be honest. Because, yes, Kendo is minimal in terms of techniques. Kenjutsu is much more complete than Kendo. There are so many different ways of utilizing the weapon that are a lot closer to real duel in samurai times. But if you get an experienced kendoka with a decade of sparring and you put him in a cage for a lethal duel with a person who has got 10 years of Iaido, my money's on the kendoka if the Iaido guy has never done any sparring. Now, I know some people will say that I have misunderstood completely and I have understood nothing of the real purposes and depth of the discipline which goes beyond fighting. No, I do realize that, but if that's their focus, then they should just talk about that and stop talking about how effective they are and how better they are than you at fighting. Because the moment fighting gets in the equation, I want proof and I want sparring. If there is no sparring, shadowboxing, as I said. Consider this as food for thought. I'm not a teacher of martial art, I'm not an expert of martial art, I'm not teaching here. I'm sharing an opinion to stimulate interesting discussion. And I hope that I can find that in the comments below today. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron spread his wings. Goodbye.